You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
Welcome back to another edition of Leafs Morning Take. No, I am not Nick Alberga. I'm Zack Phillips filling in for Nick Alberga alongside Jay Rosehill, producer of the... I don't even know what I was going to say there, Rosie. I just completely stumbled out of the gate trying to hype up producer Vic behind the scenes. But producer Vic behind the scenes there. What a way to start off the Friday morning show. 5 days away from opening night of the NHL, or for opening night for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We do have regular season hockey here today, so that is exciting. It finally feels like real things are happening for this team and for the league. Like, we're actually getting to it where stuff matters. No more discussions about who's in, who's out. We're going to actually see it take place on Wednesday night for this Maple Leafs team. But Rosie, before we get into any of that, how's the last week been? I mean, like 4 days between seeing each other. How's it been going for yourself?
It's been going badly, actually. I threw my back completely out. I feel like an old man. I can't even coach U9 hockey right now. So I'm in a bit of a downward spiral, but that's the body at pushing 40. I'm still 39, but not fun. But for other reasons, the week is dragging on to this preseason, I think, is too long. I'm tired of watching the no reason hockey. I'm sure the guys that want opportunity to try to make that team are enjoying it, but yeah, I'm ready to go for real here, and I'm looking forward to next week.
Do you still play hockey at all, Rosie?
I don't. I coach both my kids, and with minor hockey's insanity today, that is enough time in the rink for me. When I retired, I came back. Some buddies, my brother, were playing beer league. I went out there a little bit, but I mean, when you're used to playing every single day, like when you're playing in the season, if you ever got 2 days off, you come back on that third day and you're like, oh my God, like it takes a while to get back into it because you're in such a groove. You're feeling it. You feel the puck and your stick and your skates and your legs and your lungs and everything is just dialed. So then to completely leave that, go once a week at 9:30 on Sunday, The puck's in Anvil. My legs are burning. I just want out of the building. And then you got, I don't know how hard do you go? Do you go be Mr. Hardo and go 110 out there? And then it's just like embarrassing. You're like, what are you doing out there? But then you kind of go out there and just sauce it around and try to have some fun. Some guy picks your pocket, and everyone's go, whoa, and then you're like, okay. I'm just like, I don't even know what to do. I don't like it. I'm not having fun. I'm not playing anymore. And it was a short stint in my beer league career, and I shut it down.
Yeah, that's a no-win situation for yourself. Like, you go out there, you dominate. Everyone's like, oh, look at you. You played in the NHL. And then you go out there and dial it back a little bit. And it's like, the hell's wrong with this guy? He played in the NHL. So that's, it's just really no positives. And then you're just risking injury every time you step out there with those guys.
It feels like it anyways. But yeah, you're used to getting better and working on stuff and trying to get better. And then every time you go out every week, you're a little bit worse. More things are hurting. And I'm just like, this is not fun for me. So I just I stuck to coaching and hung up the playing skates and just put them on to run some drills, do a couple demos, and that's enough for me.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I played the 11 o'clock game last night for mine. Jeez. And the issue with that too is that you come back and I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling like this the whole time.
Till 2 in the morning.
Wired for like an hour and a half after, just waiting to fall asleep. So it's a tough one, but nonetheless, we are here and we're ready to talk about Maple Leafs hockey because there was a Leafs game last night right here on the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Also visit theleafsnation.com. You can find articles from our amazing team, from Nick on there, and for myself this year, I'm going to be writing for theleafsnation.com, talking about things throughout the course of the season. Make sure to check that out. Rosie, last night, Game 5 of the Maple Leafs preseason in Detroit. Basically, also, let's just recap this quickly. Terrible prediction from myself from the Tuesday show, looking at Detroit anyway. Yesterday, I texted you guys and told you I was going to be on Detroit -1.5. No bueno there on that one. 2-0 Leafs, 3-1-1 on the preseason for this team. Yes, still keeping records, but story of the night, Nicky Bobby. 2 goals last night to help them to a 2-0 victory. And I was thinking about it. I'm looking back. There's that amazing graphic as well. Dylan Nazareth from LeafsNation.com helping out with that amazing graphic. So appreciate him for putting that one together on short notice. That's pretty cool. 2 goals last night. He scores 5 now in the preseason in 4 games. He scored 5 of the Leafs' last 5 goals that were scored for this team. What do you make of Nick Robertson's preseason so far? Is this a flash in the pan? Is this a guy just fighting for his job? He's desperate to get into the lineup. Do you kind of just slot him in and say there's no way that this guy doesn't make the team? Like, how do you kind of evaluate a guy who comes out in this desperation mode and puts on a performance the way he has in the last 4 games?
Well, it is a guy trying to make the team, a guy with, something to prove. He hasn't made a team out of training camp yet. He feels, I'm very sure, like he is an NHL player. I feel like he doesn't think he's gotten a fair shake or a good opportunity in the organization, hence kind of asking for a trade, which a lot of fans are holding his feet over the coals over that one, saying, oh, what you put us through and this and that. And I'm just like, guys, he's a young guy. He's trying to make it in the NHL. He thinks he can, when you're in your close to your prime, your career, it only lasts so many years. You're aware of that. It goes by quick. Every year is crucial at that age of a high-end hockey player. And to be losing years, playing for the Marlies when you think you could be slotted in the NHL full time, it's not fun. It's not easy, and it's not where you want to be. So hence why he's like, hey, I think he did it in a respectful way. I think he wants to be in Toronto, but if the writing's on the wall, I'm not going to be there. Hey, can you trade my rights so I can get somewhere that wants to play me and has a spot? I have no problem with that. Now he comes in, he's proven himself. He is playing hard. He is putting up numerous goals. He is the number 1 standout in camp. There is no chance in hell that you don't put this guy on the opening night roster. What message would that send to everyone else in the organization for years to come? This camp, this preseason is meaningless. We're not even watching. It doesn't matter what you do. We're going to do whatever we want. And that's the message you will send if you don't put Nick Robertson on this team. He has done everything you asked of him and then some. You're going to tell me we just got a feeling about him. We're going to put him on the Marlies. We just got a feeling about someone else on, like, what are you talking about? The guy has come and lit it up. There's no other way to say it. He is on the team.
Yeah, I agree completely just with the performance that he's had so far here in this preseason and the way he's kind of shown out, not only to the coaching staff and the organization, but to the fans here as well. Just the way he's played, it just sends a bad message, puts a sour taste in everyone's mouth if he's not on the opening night roster. Like, he's going to be at this point. There's no other way around it. My thought still goes to the fact that he requested a trade, and I know you don't have to honor that request. You don't have to trade him. Maybe there's not other teams out there, but does that change anything at all? I'm not talking about him not making the roster. Let me be clear about that. But like, in terms of handling the player, handling the asset, he plays really, really well in this preseason. Like, standout player. He's the only guy scoring goals. The last 5 consecutive goals that were scored for this Leafs team, he's the one who scored them. But he asked for a trade, and he asked for a trade after Sheldon Keefe was gone and after Craig Berube was hired, and presumably after he would have had an opportunity to talk to the coaches and talk to Tree Living and figure out where he could potentially fit. He still asked for a trade in that. Like, what do you even do when you look at a guy like that who's playing this well and did ask for that trade and hasn't really changed his request? Like, at no point have we heard, oh, he's gone back to the Leafs and rescinded that. And I mean, it's not like we hear that all the time, but we did hear that about DeBrusk in Boston. He asked for a trade, went back and rescinded it and said, don't worry about trading me. Like, I'm good. I'll stay here. It is something that we've seen happen. What do you do with Nicky Bobby here?
I don't think you have to do anything. That's the business. That's business. That's the business side of it, right? He says, if you're not going to play me, I need to go elsewhere, like I mentioned before. They say, okay, well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what shakes out. I'm sure there's been phone calls and, Tree Living's been in his office kind of throwing some things and seeing what sticks. But at the end of the day, they've signed him. He's signed the contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's enough right there. He's gonna be here. He's gonna show up. He's gonna work until told otherwise, until he's told to get on an airplane and pack his bags for somewhere else. He's gonna work hard for the contract that he signed, and he's doing exactly that. So I don't fault him in any way. You have to look out for your own career. You have to try to get yourself to not waste more years, reeling in the American Hockey League when you feel like you're an NHL player. Does that mean it's going to happen? No. I mean, there's times where GMs shop a guy around and put him on the chopping block, and then they end up keeping him. Does that mean they have to be married to getting rid of the guy? No. Does Nick Robertson have to be married to getting traded out of Toronto? No. It's the business side of it. I'm not holding him against the fire for that. He's a professional. He signed the contract. He came in, did what's expected of him in camp, and he's going to continue to do the same thing for the Toronto Maple Leafs until told otherwise. Again, I think that he's earned a spot on this roster for opening night. That doesn't mean they have to ride with him and be with him forever. I mean, things could shake out. He could end up being, inconsistent, or that could be the end of his scoring until Christmas, and they'll try to unload him some other way potentially. Like, we don't know what the future holds, but as of right now, he said, the writing on the wall says that you guys don't value me very highly. So if you could package me up in a trade, I would be willing to, go somewhere else. Just gets that out there. It sucks that it gets into the media and that everyone knows about it. I'm sure he would prefer if that remained behind closed doors, but that's not the business in Toronto. And, it's like I said, you got to be a professional. I don't think they're married to him being on the team forever, but I think he's done enough to make that team. And if not, I just question how they're going to spin that. What are they going to say about everyone's like, well, what about Nick Robertson? He scored like five of the last 5 Maple Leafs goals. He's a goal scorer that you've drafted, and you're sending him down. It would make no sense. So I think he's earned it. He's done exactly what we've asked. We came into the camp and preseason saying, who's going to stand out? Who's going to do something big? Who's going to say, I'm going to make your job easy. You need me on the team. I'm going to stand out above everybody else. And we were talking about Easton Cowan a lot coming into the preseason. He hasn't done enough to stand out, I don't believe. I believe he's not going to be on the roster. I think I'm not alone in that. And Nick Robertson has done the exact opposite. And it's not just like these backdoor tap-ins or this little tip that hit his knee and he looks good on paper, but he's not really playing good. He's working his ass off defensively as well. He's killing some penalties out there. I think he's adopting the Craig Berube style of play and doing his job with putting up goals and being a shooter. So, I mean, good for Nick Robertson, if you ask me. I think, when this happens, Leafs Nation's always like, well, what about, I don't know about, well, he's inconsistent. And they're like, just sit back and say, great, good. A guy did something that was asked of him. A goal scorer worked his ass off and got a whole bunch of goals in preseason. Clap, clap, clap. Good job. You're on the team. Let's see what you can do the next coming months. Like, it's simple. I don't know why we got to complicate it.
You know who does that?
Who?
I do. I do. I'm going to do something that's going to piss you off a little bit. I'm sorry, but I know I'm going to do it. I'm going to go Toronto media here. I'm not going to disagree with anything you said about the way he's played and the way he showed out and the fact that he deserves a spot on this roster. Is there any concern because supposedly he's sucking it up, he's being quiet, and he's playing really well, he's dealing with this, but he did ask for that trade. You couldn't apparently move him in the offseason. He now looks really good. The value of the asset's higher. Is there any worry at all? I'm sorry, Rosie. Is there any worry at all that the clock strikes midnight, regular season, it flips from preseason to regular season, and he turns back to a pumpkin? And all of a sudden he's not what he is in the preseason right now. The value on the asset is now gone, and you're back to Nick Robertson of what you were last year, where you can't really do anything about it, and the time to move him has passed.
I mean, that is a bridge that they might have to cross down the road, but I don't think there's any reason to put the cart before the horse and start talking about that. As of right now, he's lighting it up. He is doing exactly what you've asked. And it's not the first time a player has had a really good summer, has matured. I mean, he looks confident as hell out there. He looks strong, confident, poised. You can see his body language and the expression on his face. He's ready to rock and roll, and he's producing. So put him in the lineup. And when Matthews and Marner and Nylander get back in the lineup too, he's got to keep that same swagger, keep that same confidence, do everything he can, whether he's playing with this guy or that guy or whoever else. Keep working your butt off. Keep playing the Berube style of hockey that he's preaching. Bury your chances like he is. And there's no reason to talk about anything else. If that starts happening, then we can have that conversation. I know that he's kind of prone to, having these flashes of brilliance and then going away for a long time. I think he would argue that he hasn't really had the opportunity to be that guy. You could go both ways on that, but at the end of the day, you got to give a player a chance to mature, to develop, and to become, to step up the rung and to go to that next level. And it looks like he's done that. So by all accounts, things are good with Nick Robertson. And until he shows otherwise, I don't think you have the conversation until that happens.
Fair enough. I had to ask it. I had to kind of see where you were at on that one.
I'm not mad.
Another story from last night, and this one is going to be an interesting discussion here as well as we lead up to opening night, is going to be what you do with the goaltenders. Anthony Stolarz goes in net last night, pitches a 30-save shutout against the Red Wings on the road. They're obviously having some fun with Tarasenko, plays with them last year in Florida. Those guys just getting reacquainted, flash the leather a little bit, have some fun with that in the first period. But it's not just that. He's looked really good all throughout the entire postseason here. Any opportunity that he's got, he looks calm. He's approached the media pretty well. Fans seem to be taking a liking to him. His teammates taking a liking to him. We haven't seen Joseph Wall in a while. Craig Berube said, it's nothing to worry about. They talked to Wall. He's practicing. Like, it's not like he's in limited action here. We're still getting to see him regularly. It's just not in these preseason games. Is this maybe the most confident you felt with the goaltending group or goaltending tandems in this Matthews era since we've had these guys step up to the NHL just between a 1-2? Obviously, there was a period of time with Freddie Anderson here, but just in that actual group of guys who could go in, and even down to Hill to be in the Marlies right now. Like, where are you at on the goaltending situation that we've got, and how confident are you feeling in these guys?
Well, I wouldn't say like hyper confident right now. I'm hopeful, and there's no reason to be anything else. I mean, you got two capable goaltenders where we kind of know what Stoli is and what he can do, and with the last couple of years under his belt, there's no reason for him to even take that next step. Which it looks like, by all accounts, he looks confident. He looks square. He had a great game last night. Pitched a shutout. Had a highlight reel save. Like, he's capable. And Joseph Wall, I think he's capable and has potential to be like an Ottinger and a Shesterkin and one of these up and comer guys where you're like, holy smokes, this guy's good. I think he's got the head on his shoulders and the ability and the mindset to do just that. Injuries can be a problem. Are they just being precautionary by keeping him out of these preseason games for the most part? Maybe, I don't know. But the thing I do worry about is like, typical Toronto would turn this into a problem, right? You've
Yeah.
got two capable goaltenders who are both playing great, and you're going to turn it into a problem by going, who's the number one here? And is it problematic when you're not sure who's going to play? Is there intercompetition? Does that create an animosity where any other market in the world would be like, hey, two goalies, whoever's playing tonight, who really cares? You guys must have an awesome friendship. You guys must feel super confident in each other. How nice does it feel to have that guy in your corner and behind you and be able to back you up, and vice versa? And it's just a great thing to have, is two capable goaltenders. But mark my words, in Toronto, depending on who's going to play, if Stoller starts playing it, they're going to try to shed some light on, ooh, does this make you mad, Wall? Ooh, is this tough for you? Ooh, do you think you're the number two guy now? And they're going to create that division, which makes it very difficult to win and perform in Toronto. I've said it before. It bothers the hell out of me. I've felt it personally and seen it firsthand. But there is no goalie problem in Toronto. There's nothing but opportunity and potential.
Rosie, you're telling me that a media group that asks Nick Robertson if he's worried about Max Pacioretty scoring in his Leafs preseason debut, you're telling me that they would create controversy amongst the goaltenders? Come on, that would never happen here. Those guys would never do that.
Between that and like mashing the panic button after game 2 of the preseason, like, it's ridiculous, man. No other organizations have to deal with that. You're down in
Yeah.
Dallas, you're down in Florida, you're in San Jose, you're in even Colorado. Like, any of those markets, they're just like, oh, cool, you guys won last night. Oh, you got some goalies. They're playing pretty good. Hey, yeah, things are good in Colorado. And then here it's just like, let's just deep dive and peel layers back and dissect and try to twist it into this. It's bloody pathetic. And that is why the media gets so little out of these players. That's why they're so sheltered from you. That's why they don't give much for answers, and they give the John Tavares speeches on all their things, because you can't say boo without them turning it into some ridiculous headline about some sky is falling scenario that's complete bullshit. And you try to perform at a high level with that many people watching and all those expectations of that city, with the media twisting things in that direction as well. It's very difficult. And I don't think there's any real mystery on why the Leafs haven't won since 67. It's because they have to not only play in the NHL, but they got to fight that bullshit every day as well. And it's just another layer of difficulty for that organization. And I would love if they could just, ride the wave and be positive and just not try to get that headline question answer soundbite out of every goddamn question by phrasing it like a moron. Just talk to the guys and be chill about it and be happy if things are going good, and don't try to create a problem where there is none. I think that would serve the actual Maple Leafs very well.
Yeah, this is a good problem to have.
Hmm.
Having two good goaltenders like Blake Brim in the chat. Two great goalies, a good problem to have. One that the Leafs haven't had to deal with in a long time. And maybe comment of the day here from Donald McRonald. Best since Pogge, says so. But yeah, like
Just
having two
Hoagie.
guys that you go back and forth with. Like, do you think Boston was upset that they had Swayman and Allmark playing at an exceptional level last year? Obviously, they have their own issues this year, but like going into the playoffs with two guys who are absolutely buzzing and being able to bounce back and forth between them, that's incredible. We've looked at situations in the past where we've got Freddie Anderson, who comes in and plays really well for a couple of games, and then he's got to go out because he can't play 82 games. And it's like Michael Hutchison is going in there. No disrespect to Michael Hutchison, but just as a guy who's going to hop in behind this team, it doesn't instill the most confidence. Now, between the rotation that you got, it feels a lot better. It feels a lot more comfortable. Like you can trust the guy going in there on any given night. And whether you're going to have Wall go down with injury and Stolarz has to step up and take over, I feel okay with that. Or if Stolarz doesn't play that well and Wall's got to be the guy to lead the charge, I'm also okay with that. It's like, this is a comfortable feeling to have. I don't want to get too comfortable with it, but it's just one of those ones where entering the season, I'm not mashing panic button on, oh my God, who's going to be the goalie? Do we have one? What's the situation going to be? It feels good. Feels good to have that. As we approach game one, though, Rosie, we talked about the fact that Wall hasn't played that much, and we haven't seen him in game action. Stolarz is getting actual ice time in these preseason games here. I pulled up Bet365 earlier, and goalie to start first game. That is something you can bet on. Joseph Wall, I believe, was like minus 1,000 when I looked. Anthony Stolarz plus 600. Who would you be starting in game one? Given, hot hands, guy who's playing more going into it. Are they just resting Joseph Wall? That's the plan all along. Like, what would be your thought process going into game one between these guys? Who gets the net?
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I would like to be part of the conversation with Joseph Wall. Like, what do you feel? And is something bugging you, or is something nagging you? Do you feel like you're wasting your time out there, or risking injury out there? Are you a goalie that doesn't like the reps before you're going for real? Like, what's the reason that he hasn't seen much action this preseason? And that would help me determine what's going on. But I'm always fascinated by these guys with kind of injuries coming into camp. It's like, what the hell have you been doing all like 2 months? If you go to the cup final, is a lot of time to get, to see your specialist, get your rehab, hell, get surgery, do whatever you need to do. And if that's not the case, it's like, well, then what is still bugging you, man? And if his ankle's still bothering him, or if something's tweaked from, like, we don't know the story, but I would believe that Joseph Wall is the goalie to start. I think he's the number one, and Stoley's right behind him. And there's no reason to think that's not still the case. It's kind of, a bit of a question mark on, like, why hasn't he really seen much action? And, you got to go by Berube saying he's fine. It's nothing that's going on. There's no story there. So I guess we'll wait and see. But if he does have a little nagging thing, I mean, I think they'd be pretty confident going with Stoley, especially after the performance last night. So again, a good problem to have. If it's not Wool, then it can be Stoley. It's not like all your eggs are in the Wool basket, and if not, we're kind of screwed. And then everyone's panicking, going, "Why don't we have a deeper goaltender depth and this, that, and the other thing?" It's not a huge problem, but I mean, everyone's waiting for Joseph Wall to be hurt. And I mean, I don't think that's really fair. He's been hurt a couple times in the past. Those high ankle sprains are such a pain to try to heal, especially for a goaltender with the skates they wear, the positions they get put in. It's not great, but I don't think you need to chalk him up as this Band-Aid who's going to be hurt, half the season. Give him a chance. And it's interesting. I mean, I wouldn't mind sprinkling a little bit on Stoley. Maybe they go with Stoley just because, a little bit of a groin thing, and there's no, I don't know where they're going to go, but I mean, just the fact that the money is that valued with Stoley, and he's played well, and haven't seen much of Wool, hell, sprinkle a little bit on Stoley. But I think Wool's the number one, but I'm not really going to, be in a panic if they happen to go with Stoley for game one, but there will have to be some kind of an explanation, I would think.
You want to know why I love this chat and this fan base so much, and why it makes this so enjoyable? Here are back to back comments that are going on right now while we're having this conversation, while you're talking about this. So it starts with no way they don't start Wall game one, right? The very next comment is Stolar's game one, not even debatable. And then it will be Wall, but it shouldn't. Then we have super chat here from our friend Tammy. Stoli the goalie can Stoli the number one spot from Wooly the goalie. Like another one. Wall is twice the goalie. Stolars is like we haven't even gotten to game one of the regular season. We have 7 months of NHL hockey to watch, and we are already in a great goalie debate. But again,
Good problem
Good problem to have. Good problem to have. I'm happy with it, and I look forward to continuing the debate. If you guys are in the chat enjoying the conversation, enjoy the show here today, please make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe here to the channel, Leafs Nation 401, the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube, and Leafs Morning Take wherever you can find your podcast. But Rosie, we talk about these good problems to have. You know, Nick Robertson playing really well, fighting his way into the lineup. Like, oh no, you got to put this guy in there game one because he scored the last 5 goals. Good problem to have. Anthony Stolars and Joseph Wall battling back and forth. He'll be looking good. Like he could make a jump at some point in the near future. Good problem to have. Let's go a little bit to the negative side. A bad problem to have potentially here is what the hell you do with defensemen 6 through 8. And what I mean by that is seems like you're pretty locked in here. Morgan Riley, Chris Tanev, Simon Benoit has made a name for himself here in Toronto, especially alongside Jake McCabe. Ekman Larson is going to be in this lineup, but then that 6th spot, not only up for grabs, but it feels uncomfortable amongst the fan base. You look at Connor Timmins, Yanni Hakanpää, who is now finally practicing with the team, still wearing the red jersey, non-contact jersey, but finally practicing. And then Timothy Liljegren, who has been here for a while, and to some of the fan base, they love him. To some of the fan base, not so much. Now making $3 million a year, still slotting into that third pairing, second guy on the third pairing spot. It just feels a little bit uncomfortable, kind of sitting there watching these guys. And I've really not been impressed with Timothy Liljegren through the first few preseason games that he's gotten action in. Do you foresee a problem, just a hole in the roster? And like, how do you kind of handle who takes that spot? And then what you do with some of the money that's being taken up by a guy who could potentially be your 7th defenseman making $3 million a year?
That's kind of the kicker is his money and needing to get into the cap. Like they are on a time crunch here. They have to do something before opening night roster. They're over the salary cap. You can't start the season there where the Nick Robertson thing is like, put him in there. You can deal him later. You can still put him on waivers. You can do whatever the hell you want. Like he's earned it, put him in there and see what happens. Like it's a simple, it's not a problem. It's just a simple thing. But with the back end, it's like, what do you do? Who do you go with? I wish Hakanpää was ready because you could just put him in. And I think he could be slotted there with OEL and see how that works. But when I look at it from the other side of the things, you know, previous years, Liljegren's probably like the same player, but no one's talking about him because there's other problems going on, right? There's other guys behind him and they want to fill more holes and he's not really the issue. Now I think they've shored up their D in such a way that he's kind of the only really, you know, issue or question mark that's still hanging out, which again, that's a positive thing. There's one guy you're kind of like, we don't love him. He's not really, you know, he's got those mistakes sometimes he makes, like just little things where, you know, they kind of stand out. You know, first shift, he dumps the puck and doesn't even get the red line and it's an icing. Like what? Like that's just kind of shit where it's like, what are you doing? And he has not really stood out in positive ways. And when you do notice him, it's usually for something negative, being out of position, coughing the puck up, not making the right play. And to make $3 million too, it's tough. I mean, no one's going to take that off of your hands. I love it when the chats and stuff are like, well, trade him to who? To who? Yeah. Who's taking Liljegren for 3 point whatever? Like
they're just doing you a favor.
No one's jumping at taking an average defenseman with $3 million in cap space. They're just dying to fill up with Timothy Liljegren. That's not going to happen. So I think you kind of, depending on where Hakanpää is, if you want to give Timmins, I think they're going to still give Lily above Timmins and just play him and see what happens. And if it really starts to deteriorate, hopefully Hakanpää will be ready. You know, he's practicing full time now. I don't imagine it'll be more than a week or two until he's like, I'm ready to get into game action. And then you can really see where that guy's at. But he's younger than Hakanpää. They've got a similar amount of experience in the league, believe it or not. It's just a question of how do you get under that cap. I don't know if they're as unimpressed with him as to put him through waivers. Do you?
No, I mean, it's a weird thing though, because we're hearing like we know they're gonna have to move some guys. We know that stuff's gonna have to happen. And it's like, oh, Yarncrow, could he be moved? Kampf, could he be moved? Those guys probably, to me at this point, provide more value. So you're gonna look at Timothy Liljegren. You can't just waive that guy. Like, you got to get some. Like, this is the problem though, right? It's what you're saying, where who the hell is just going to go and get this guy? Like, who's just going to go and trade him for a favor? But you can't just waive him because someone's going to claim him. Like, if you can get the guy doing that, like, you don't think someone will just claim him?
And when you're on, you just pick up his whole contract and put him on your roster. Who? I don't know who's looking for an average $3 million defenseman with, like, who has $3 million in cap space that's going to need that guy that bad to pick him up. I think he probably clears. It's, do you want that guy in the minors? It would solve your cap problem in a hurry. I'm not saying do it, but there's not a lot of, like, I'm just curious on how they're going to get under this cap. What are they, 1 point something million bucks over? They gotta, not a lot of guys. Like, there's a lot of guys on like $800-900. That doesn't get it done. You still gotta put someone a little bit substantial away in some way. And is Hakanpää ready? No. So are you going to make that move to put Timmins in? Are you that displeased with Liljegren? I think they just keep him and ride him and hope that the D's short up enough that he finds his game and doesn't become a problem and finds some chemistry with a partner. I think that's the way to go, but that still leaves the question mark of how are you getting under the cap?
Yeah, and then, like, even cap aside, the other thing is, like, look at the way he plays, look at the issues we have with him back there and kind of the deficiencies that he has. You think OEL is the guy, no disrespect to OEL, but you think he's the guy who's helping Timothy Liljegren figure out his game and shore up his defensive holes that he's got and, like, the problems that he's got there? Like, I don't think that that's the case. I don't think that's the best guy to have in that spot. It's, that's the one that I kind of look at like, hey, you know what? I'm happy with the rest of the defensemen, the rest of the D group. And as we see Pruservic putting up on screen, the D pairs, that's the hole. That's the one hole I'm looking at right now going, this is not a good problem to have like we've gotten the other ones. This is one of those ones that's like, that needs to be sorted out. I don't know. It's a
And
weird
he's
spot.
a right-handed shot. Like, are you just pulling a right-handed defenseman out of the lineup? Like, it's you've been searching for that,
Yeah,
and
I
it's
know.
rare. So they're in a bit of a jam. It will be interesting to see what they do with them. I'm interested to see how much of a problem they think he is and how displeased they are with his play and how worried about the future with him they are, or if they're like, hey, he's fine. He's a capable defenseman. He hasn't had a great camp, but that's not high end on the priority list. We'll see what they do. I'm excited for the next 5 days to see what moves they make to make this roster square and complete and cap compliant.
Well, we'll talk about more of that throughout Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, leading up when Nick is back, takes over. Some of you will be happy. I'll be out of the chair, just back to the post games. But I'll be back on the post game show tomorrow night, talking about the game after the final preseason game against the Red Wings back here in Detroit. We'll be back for first game of the season against Montreal, October 9th for the Leafs Nation After Dark. You can find Rosie here Monday through Friday, right here on Leafs Morning Take, alongside myself next Monday, Tuesday, and Nick Alberga. But Rosie, as we're sitting here doing the show, I kid you not, I have 64 text messages right now. The Amazon Prime documentary came out today. Okay, I don't know if you've seen all the clips and stuff on social media. My phone is blowing up. You and I are in it. Did you know
Come on.
that?
No,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Oh, is it
Apparently
when I'm
we're in it.
ripping Marner that night?
I
Oh,
haven't, I
really?
don't even know. I just have, my phone is blowing up since we got on the show within the last 10 minutes. Apparently all my buddies are watching this right now. They all watch the show, the Leafs Nation channel here as well. They're all texting me, you're in the show. Rosie's in the show. Did you guys know you were going to be in here? Did you not have any idea that was going to happen?
No idea. Hey, good for the show, man. We
Yeah.
made enough noise to make it on that thing. I think people have been talking about that for a while. That show, I really like those things. I haven't seen it obviously, but to akin them to the 24/7s that were out there years past. God, were those well done.
Yeah.
And with the amount of exposure and inside access and, mics left, right, and center, I think they probably did it right to the point where these guys just got used to these cameras around. Because you throw a mic in, a camera in there for 2 days, guys are just totally aware of this thing and they're not going to say anything interesting and they're not going to be themselves. But in those 24/7s, those cameras are like living with those guys. They get used to them and then can actually let their guard down and be themselves. So I hope that's the case, but we'll see what clip they picked of me and you and that damn thing. And that's cool to be on. I'll have to go watch it after this.
I'm excited. I'm nervous to see what the clip is that we got grabbed for as well. But yeah,
Me
apparently we're
too.
in there. Yeah, I do want to ask you about this. Like, also, one of the things that I love about these, I'm gonna go watch these. But when I was a kid, there was two things I wanted to do. One, to be in the NHL and play for the Maple Leafs. And if that wasn't gonna happen, I wanted to be one of the documentary makers, the guys who, excuse me, go behind the scenes and make the 24/7s. Like, those were the two things. Ended up doing neither. I'm here talking to you
Hey, you're
with you,
close.
breaking these down, but not too far off. But we'll go and watch these. I'm curious your thoughts. You were in the rooms, you got to be there, be a part of this, have cameras around. You also watch the 24/7s. I've talked with you and listened to you talk about it with Nick a bunch about how these operate and like how cool it is for people to get to see these. I think it's one of those things that it's more cool for kids, even more than anything else, because they see it and it's like, man, that's what being an NHL player is like. If you didn't have the drive already, maybe it just pushes you a little bit more to just see the behind the scenes stuff. But we saw this clip of McDavid going viral. I want to start here of him yelling in the room during the Stanley Cup playoffs against Florida. I'm not sure which game it was yet, but it's been going all over the internet. And I love it. It's him basically coming in the room and tearing the team to pieces. That's not good enough. This is the finals, etc. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but watching that emotion was like, yeah, this is what it takes to go this far in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Were you surprised at all to see that that was a clip that was actually put into this documentary? You think that, like, I loved it personally, seeing that, but just knowing how kind of guarded McDavid is about everything in his personal life and who he is behind the scenes, I felt like that was one of those clips that might have been like, hey, like, can we not use that one? Can we not put it out there? I was a little bit surprised.
Oh hell no! I think it's great. You caught the guy working in his element. He's not in interview camera reporter mode. And you know how he is in that. And a guy like that, it's no different than Crosby or Gretzky or these guys that have come up, they have been told, hey, you're going to have a long career. You're going to be the captain of a franchise. You're going to have a billion questions asked. You're going to have a million interviews. Here's how you got to keep it to keep yourself out of the spotlight for the wrong reasons, to keep yourself away from distractions and what you got to kind of, do the thing that they do, which is not give very interesting interviews. But you catch McDavid right there in the finals. I mean, that is not rare. That is not crazy. Like, for people to be shocked
Yeah.
that that's happening. He's the captain of the team in the finals that is having, a huge hiccup and having a meltdown and getting really behind the eight ball. God damn it, boys. Like, he can't let his team get flat. He can't let his team hang their head. He can't let his team have fear or doubt creep in, and you're putting your gear up on your thing and you're sitting down, you're grabbing a water and everyone's taking their upper gear off and it's intermission and this is the final. Like, that's not rare, man. And I was not surprised to see that whatsoever. And I don't have any problem or for anyone to think that needs to be cut. That is a guy that is the best in the business. That is him working, and there's not a damn thing wrong with it. I wasn't surprised. That's how things go in those rooms when your leaders need to stand up and keep the guy's head screwed on straight. That's what they do, and that's what they should do. And I would love to see more of that out of Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, those types of guys, for them to come into the locker room and be vocal and be passionate. That's what I want out of my leaders.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going to go with this. There's a good comment in the chat. Patrick G Mafia said, "You have to hate to lose to be a winner." I think that that's important distinction, and it's something that we see in that documentary, that clip. Like, I love that clip so much, and I feel like that's one of those things where we're going to kind of, as fans of the Leafs, look to and be like, "Hey, this is what we want to see. This is what we're talking about." And at the end of the year, we have these discussions, like when they go out and they do their locker clean out, or they go up after game 7 when they lose each year in the first round, and they go up on stage and they're upset clearly, and I'm not ever going to say that these guys are not upset that they lost and not disappointed in themselves, whatever. But it's the McDavid going in there and tearing a strip off of these guys in a productive way. Let's also be clear about that. It's a good way to do it, to kind of wake people up and say, hey, like, let's go. But it's him going in there and hating to lose. You see the clips of them after game 7 as well now coming out. He's got his head down. He's crying in the room. He's furious that they've just lost the Stanley Cup final. I think that's the disconnect, or that's the thing people are looking for. I always remember Nathan McKinnon, I believe it was the year before they won the cup, went up on stage. He was asked by a reporter about, you didn't get it done this year. Do you kind of just come in next year? You've got your points. You had a great season yourself. You come in next year and just try to do the same things and get to the, you're a superstar player, and maybe it just works out next year. And he snaps on the reporter. I'm not saying not to have respect for people in the room, but you could tell it just built up to him. Like, I'm so sick of losing. I'm so sick of hearing these stupid questions about how many points I get and how good I am as a person, as an individual player. Like, F this. I want to win the Stanley Cup. How many, like he asks, he's like, how many rings do I have? How many times have I won the Stanley Cup? Like, that's the answer. I'm not satisfied. McDavid, that's how he's showing in that clip. I think that's what people want out of these Leafs guys. Is no one's saying that they're not upset to lose. They obviously are. But you want to see that like next step of like, I'm not just upset to lose. I'm furious that we lost. And I feel like that's the piece that's missing.
Yeah, and I know what you're trying to get at. Craig Berube is going to do his best to instill that type of culture and to breed that out of the guys. But there is this, it's a hint of like ho-hummedness, and like, I agree with you. I know these guys want to win, and they do not want to lose. There's nothing worse than losing in Toronto. It's just like, God, again, like, oh, we're going to hear about it. But it's not this intense, furious passion that I want to see. And when I look at the Leafs, whether they're doing well or not doing well, I see Mitch Marner, and I see Austin Matthews, and I see Willie Nylander, and I see these individuals, and they're all very good. And I see them. I want to see the Maple Leafs. I want to see this glue that just covers all of them, and they all have this attitude, and they all have this expectations and this intensity and this passion and this performance that is together. And it's like they win together, and it's not just like one guy popped off. It's like they did it, and they lose together, and they're all furious, and like, we know what to do to fix this. And it's this togetherness that they just don't seem to have. And it's hard to put it into words, and it's hard to quantify it.
Yeah.
But when I look over the past few seasons, and when they're doing well and when they're not doing well, I kind of see these individuals. And I really think Craig Berube's job is to get them playing as a team. And that's why I've used the word identity so many times this preseason. Is I think he's trying to breed that identity of, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and this is how we can fall back on a foundation and on each other and on our character and on our identity when things aren't going well, to make sure it's just a little blip on the radar, and then boom, we know how to pick right back up where we're headed and what we're learning, to be more consistent, to be more, a team, and to have that chemistry. They're looking for that, because they have not done much to speak of with this group. And I think that they have underperformed. So they're trying to right that ship and figure out, why has it not gone well? And in my mind, when I watch it from the outside, I don't see that togetherness that I think the winning teams have. Go back through all the years. You're talking about Colorado. You're talking about these guys. When they're winning, it's just this wave of Colorado. It's this wave of Florida. And it's not these little individual guys who pop up and get 2 goals and an assist on this night. And it's not just one guy popping up and having a performance left, right, and center. And you do that enough times, you win a Stanley Cup. It's this wave of team that just is overwhelming. And you just overwhelm teams until you just win a game, win a series, and get to where you need to go. And the Leafs don't have that yet, but they're looking for it. And I think the best move they have made is getting Craig Berube in there to try to facilitate it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm willing to admit it might just be like caveman thoughts of myself to be like, get mad and show us that you're mad kind of thing, to like prove that you want it. Like, that might not be the reality of some of these guys, but I mean, I look around and I see these clips of McDavid, and it's like, well, the quietest goddamn superstar we've ever seen is showing this frustration out there. You know, you can tell Crosby's got it in some of the post-game interviews when they get bounced early and don't have it. And he's not yelling and screaming, but you can kind of just see the frustration come through. Or McKinnon like screaming at Jared Bednar on the bench. And you're like looking at some of these superstars and you're like, well, you guys are just feel a little quiet. And again, maybe it's just an idiot thought of being like, get mad. I want to see you get mad. But I think a guy who kind of endeared himself to Leafs fans, and we're going to see it in the documentary when we go watch this later, is William Nylander. You know, I look at the article that he's got with Luke Fox, in Sportsnet the other day, and Luke Fox is asking him, because he's asking him about the article and what happened in the playoffs, and he said, when it means more, I shift a little bit. I think I become a different person in those moments. And then you look at the quote that Nylander had that we finally get the audio of, that we're going to get to see. But I think it made Leafs fans really, really happy when we heard him say it, or when we saw him say it on the bench in the playoffs last year. You see it up on the screen there as producer Vic brings up, but he said, effing shoot it, bro. Stop effing crying, bro. This is the effing issue. You guys bitch about shit. Let's effing go. Like we saw him flip the switch. We saw him get mad. And everyone in Toronto was like, thank you. You called out Marner. It seems like maybe by this quote, he might have called out Matthews too. We'll find out later and we can discuss on Monday, but he snapped. He crossed the line and he said, screw it. We're losing. We're in the playoffs. Stop crying. Stop worrying about all these fancy little things. Like, play the goddamn game the right way. Let's win the hockey game. Let's win. We are in the playoffs. Let's take over. Let's do it. We are the best players on the ice. I mean, obviously paraphrasing for him, but he just said, screw it. Enough's enough. And I think people really, really bought into William Nylander. This guy also signed an 8-year deal, Rosie. One of the only superstars here in Toronto who's done so. Like, he bought in, said he wants to be here, and now all of a sudden Leafs fans like, yeah, this is our guy. See comments like that. I mean, how far have you turned on William Nylander or come on William Nylander in his time here, and just kind of the player he's become and who he is to the city, and seeing comments like that? Like, how much do you appreciate that for how honest and open he is?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I just sum it up with one word: intensity. Like, that's what Connor McDavid was showing there in that clip. That's what Nathan McKinnon shows in those clips that you're referencing. And I look at Marner and Matthews and Tavares, and there's just not a lot of intensity, right? It's just kind of flat. And when they're losing, it's just kind of like their demeanor doesn't really change too much. And yeah, I know the highs can't get too high and the lows can't get too low, but you know what I'm saying? There's just a lack of kind of intensity. And I don't know if it's just because they haven't been forced to, operate that way, or it's kind of a bit of a country club can create that environment. You've got to have that intensity level. And I think it's something that the Leafs have been missing. It's not necessarily going and fighting everyone or getting some goons or getting huge like, it's just an attitude. And William Nylander's kind of adopted that in the last few years. You remember when he was getting torn apart because his controllers disconnect, and he's just floating out there and just looking at a guy to go get the puck from behind him and allowing soft plays. He hasn't really shown any of that in the last couple of years. He's really stepped it up. He wants to win. You can see him on the bench calling players out and saying this isn't good enough. Quit bitching. Like, let's just get some bloody intensity. And I would love it to get an Austin Matthews clip of doing the same thing, or a Mitch Marner of doing the same thing. Put your helmet on thing and sit down and let's go. Let's go. Let's turn it up to 10 and not give a shit about anything but each other, and put the hammer down, get some intensity, force a bloody friggin' win on that one that you otherwise would have dropped. That is going to suit you if that's your identity in the playoffs when it matters. Instead of dropping that game 3, you're going to get the 2-1 lead and you're going to go ahead. It's going to serve you well. And every single team that wins has that in spades. And I think it's kind of a missing ingredient with the Leafs. And I hope that Craig Berube, again, can bring that out of those players, because they haven't seemed to be able to right the ship themselves in the last handful of years.
Well, I'm excited to see the doc. I'm excited to see some of the behind-the-scenes stuff of Nylander, the Leafs, the playoffs, the comments that were made on the bench during the games. I think it's going to be fun. I love these kinds of things. And for anybody watching, this is the new documentary coming out on Amazon Prime, or out now on Amazon Prime, I guess. Rosie, excited and also a little bit nervous to hear what the hell you and I got clipped for that's in there. But apparently Rosie and I have some audio bits in the show, so that'll be fun to go and check out as well. But yeah, Amazon Prime documentary came out today, so gonna go and watch some of the behind the scenes stuff of that and the playoffs and some of the stuff around the league as well. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. But outside of that, it's time for the last call brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. You want to talk about different markets that you can bet on, Rosie? I brought up earlier in the show the fact that we could bet on which goalie would start for opening nights. Like, talking about crazy things you can bet on. There is the first regular season NHL game today. I'm excited to watch NHL regular season hockey. It is obviously the global series, the Europe games, and the Devils and the Sabres will be going head to head. We've both got best bets here. I'll give this one out for myself. I've got two that I like. First one, Owen Power plus 550 power play point. Now, I can't dig too much into this one just in terms of, it's the first regular season game, so we don't have too many data points to back up. This is around where it was last year. I think this is a guy who's getting better every single year. Obviously, he's still going to be on power play 2. Rasmus Dahlin's going to be taking power play 1 in Buffalo, but this guy's a stud. I think that there's going to be more of a even approach to how many minutes and these guys are going to get on that power play in Buffalo. I think Owen Power is a guy who's going to be stepping up this year, going to be taking a step forward. Plus 550 power play point. I like that one. And then the other one would be 2.5 shots on goal plus 135. Those are my favorite bets for today for today's game. Where are you at, Rosie? Any best bets you've got?
Well, I don't go too deep into the shot props and all that stuff. I keep it kind of surface, but I think I think that the Buffalo Sabres are on their way up. I think they're going to put a season together. I think they have a chance to make the playoffs depending on what happens in that division. But Lindy Ruff being back at the helm, when I think of Lindy Ruff coaching, I think of him behind the Buffalo Sabres bench, and to get replaced mid-season last year by the New Jersey Devils. It's a revenge game. I'm kind of wondering what Sheldon Keefe's going to do with those guys. They kind of underachieved, replaced Lindy Ruff mid-season. I think that the Buffalo Sabres are going to take it, and I think they're a healthy little plus 140 or something of that nature. So
yeah, let me double check for you.
I got Lindy Ruff with the revenge game back behind the bench in Buffalo.
Yeah, like plus 130 here.
130,
It seems like I'm pulling up on the screen. Plus 130 for the Sabres tonight. I like that one, Rosie. I like that one.
And they're in Europe?
Yes.
Always
confirmed.
hard. Always tough to see. It's a crapshoot. I don't know who's going to show up to there. I don't know whose travel is brutal. I don't know who hates being jet lagged. I don't know who's going to be distracted. I don't know who's going out and checking out the European scene. I don't know, but I just think Lindy Ruff behind the Buffalo Sabres bench, little revenge game back on the Devils who just canned them. Let's go. I'm cheering for Lindy Ruff at that plus money.
Prague. Prague is where the game is taking place. I didn't even know that. I'm not gonna lie. Prague, first game in the NHL regular season, 2024-2025 season. I will be back tomorrow night for Leafs Nation After Dark. Final preseason game. Leafs, Red Wings hosting Detroit here. Looks like a lot of the big boys might get another opportunity to go. So I'm excited about that game as well. But tune in here on the channel. Make sure to subscribe to Leafs Nation 401. Leafs Morning Take, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next Monday. Myself, Rosie, you're here. I'll be back on Tuesday, and then Nick and Rosie back. The regular show next Wednesday to tee up, game 1 of the regular season, October 9th against Montreal Canadiens. And of course, I'll be back Wednesday night for Leafs Nation After Dark with Rosie as well. You got double duty on Wednesday.
Yeah, buddy. Finally, man. It'll be I always love opening night. This is our 3rd year doing this show, and to be into it and have all the prep and all the thought and figuring things out and crunching numbers and going over lines and possibilities. It's all done. Here's the roster. Now you're going real bullets. I love it. So I'm excited for that, buddy.
Back daily next week, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. right here on this channel. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in here today. Please make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel on your way out. We will see you guys back here for Leafs Nation After Dark tomorrow night. And next week, Leafs Morning Take Monday morning. Thanks so much to everyone watching. Rosie, appreciate you taking the time to do this every single day. Appreciate the insights that you bring and the energy that you bring. And producer Vic, the best producer in the game behind the scenes. Thank you guys very much. We'll see you guys soon. Go Leafs, go.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long-form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.